Have you ever wondered how well you really know the people you spend 8 hours a day with? Because statistically, most of us don't know our coworkers at all. According to workplace psychology research, nearly 62% of employees admit they hide major parts of their personal lives from people they work with, and 1 in 5 workers say they felt unsafe around a colleague at least once. It's a strange thought that someone sitting just one desk away, someone you laugh with during lunch breaks, someone who seems completely normal, might be hiding something dark enough to ruin your life. Tonight's stories come from real people who discovered the terrifying truth about those working right beside them. These aren't ghost stories, no monsters, no demons, just the horror of discovering that the person you trusted in your workplace was capable of something far worse. These are 3 very disturbing, true coworker horror stories, and after listening to them, you might never look at your office the same way again. I used to work at a mid-sized printing company, where the air always smelled like hot ink and burnt paper, the kind of place where machines hummed non-stop, fluorescent lights buzzed above your head, and everyone moved around like tired robots. Among the 20 or so employees, there was one guy everyone knew but nobody really talked to, Daniel. He was quiet, awkward, never joined lunch breaks, but always stayed late. Not occasionally, every single night. We'd leave around 6, and when we passed the glass windows from outside, we would still see him inside, sitting completely still at his desk or walking between aisles with that blank expression on his face. Some people said he was hardworking. Others said he didn't like going home. No one really cared enough to ask. One night, I had to stay late myself because a major order came in last minute. The office slowly emptied out until I was the only one left, or so I thought. Around 10:45 p.m., I stretched, looked over the cubicle wall, and noticed Daniel's desk lamp was still on. His jacket was draped over the chair, his bag was on the floor, but he wasn't there. At first, I didn't think much of it, but something about the silence felt heavier than usual. The printers had powered down, the vending machine lights flickered, even the air felt stale. Then I heard it. A faint scraping noise coming from the storage room. It sounded like cardboard being dragged across concrete. I told myself it was probably just a box settling, but the sound didn't stop. It came again, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. Curiosity and unease mixed in my chest, and I walked toward the large metal door at the end of the hallway. When I pushed it, it only opened halfway. Something was blocking it from the inside. I pushed harder. It finally gave way, and when it opened, the scene inside hit me like a punch. The room was dark except for a single battery lantern sitting on the floor, casting a weak circle of yellow light around the cluttered boxes. In the middle of the storage room, kneeling on the ground, was Daniel. He wasn't organizing anything. He wasn't repairing anything. He was surrounded by stacks of employee files, and he was ripping out the ID badge photos from each one by one. He was shredding them into tiny pieces and placing each shredded pile into carefully labeled plastic bags. Some bags had names I recognized. Some were labeled with dates. Some had both. And then I realized something that turned my blood cold. There was a bag with my name on it. He was muttering something under his breath, too low to fully understand. I stepped closer without even thinking, and that's when I finally heard it clearly. He was reciting our schedules, our arrival times, break times, departure times, over and over, like he was rehearsing. Then he stopped. Slowly, he lifted his head and turned toward me with that same blank, unreadable expression he always had. But this time, something in his eyes looked alive. He didn't stand. He didn't apologize. He just said in the calmest voice I've ever heard, "It's almost your turn." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't argue. I ran out of that room so fast I almost slipped. I locked myself in the bathroom, shaking, trying to call security with trembling fingers. When they arrived and checked the room, they found exactly what I saw, and more. There were over 200 shredded photos, organized by person and date. A notebook filled with names, habits, addresses he could have only gotten by digging through HR files. Notes like, "Keep staring," "Too loud," "Disrespectful," and "Will be dealt with." Will be dealt with. And my name had that phrase written next to it twice. HR tried to keep it quiet. They told everyone Daniel had violated company policy and was dismissed immediately. But one of the security guards I trusted told me the truth. They had found a rusted hammer and duct tape hidden behind one of the shelves, items that had no business being in a printing office. Later, I learned through a coworker that Daniel had been reported for concerning behavior at his previous job, but nothing serious was ever done. They simply wrote it off as stress. Workplace safety studies say that 78% of violent workplace incidents are preceded by behavioral red flags: isolation, obsession, unusual work hours, collecting information about coworkers. Looking back, those signs were right in front of us the whole time. We just ignored them. I quit 2 weeks later. I don't care if it hurt my resume. The thought of sitting in that office again, knowing that someone had been preparing something, studying us, memorizing our movements. Sometimes at night, when I stay late at home finishing freelance work, I still get nervous. Every little sound makes me glance around. Every shadow near the hallway makes my pulse jump, because now I know the truth. You can spend years working beside someone and never realize how dangerously close they really are. I used to work at a small family-owned bakery, the kind that smelled like warm cinnamon every morning and felt friendly on the surface. Everyone joked around, helped each other, shared snacks during breaks. Everyone except Lisa. Lisa was different. She was overly cheerful, overly excited, overly involved, and she took birthdays more seriously than anyone I've ever met. It wasn't just a hobby for her, it was an obsession. Anytime someone's birthday came around, she went all out. Balloons, banners, cupcakes, little notes, paper crowns. Even if she barely knew the person, there was something off about her enthusiasm, something desperate behind her wide smile, but nobody really confronted her. Why would they? A person who loves celebrating birthdays seems harmless, right? I thought that too, until my turn came. A week before my birthday, Lisa asked me what kind of cake I wanted. I told her gently, "I'm not doing anything this year, just keeping it low-key." She froze. Her smile didn't fade, it just tightened, like her face was made of plastic. "Oh," she said slowly. "But birthdays are important." I laughed it off. "Not this year. I just don't feel like celebrating." Her eyes tracked me the entire rest of the day. Every time I glanced up from kneading dough or boxing pastries, she was watching me, without blinking, without smiling, like I personally offended her. The next day, she tried again. "What about decorations? You like blue, right?" I told her no. She tried again the next day. "Are you sure? I can bring something small." Again, I said no. By the third day, her friendly tone was gone. She said my name sharply. "You must celebrate." Like it wasn't a suggestion, like it was a rule. When I refused again, she turned around and walked away and didn't speak to me for the rest of the week. I should have known then that something was wrong. My birthday fell on a Monday. I walked into the bakery feeling exhausted, hoping it would be a normal day. But when I opened the break room door, my breath caught in my throat. The entire room was decorated, but in the wrongest way imaginable. All the balloons were black. The table was covered with a dark tablecloth. A banner hung across the wall. "Happy last year." At first I didn't understand. Last year of what? Then my stomach twisted. It sounded like a threat, like a countdown. In the middle of the table was a cake.
dark red swirls, letters carved deep into the frosting like scratches.
The red icing looked disturbingly like dried blood. Later I learned it was cherry concentrate. But in that moment, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Then I felt breath on the back of my neck. Lisa was standing directly behind me. "You didn't want to celebrate," she whispered. "So I made this one special." Her voice wasn't cheerful anymore. It was low, almost trembling with emotion. Not sadness, but something like anger and devotion mixed together. I backed away slowly, but she stepped forward. "You don't get it," she said. "No one skips their birthday, not with me." That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I double-checked my locks and tried to forget about it. Around 11:40 p.m., I heard metallic scraping at my front door. I froze. The peephole was covered. Someone outside was pressing something over it. Then the doorknob moved. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't move or make a sound. I just watched the screws on the deadbolt tremble. And then whoever was there tried a key. A key. Not a lockpick, not a tool. A key, which meant it was someone who had access to the staff key cabinet at the bakery, the same one that held spare apartment keys for emergency deliveries. I called the police, whispering. By the time they arrived, the person had already run off. But they confirmed someone had used a key and tried to force the lock when it didn't work. I didn't tell them who I suspected. I didn't need to. The next morning, Lisa didn't show up for work. No call, no message, just vanished. HR finally stepped in and did a background check they should have done earlier. Turns out Lisa had been reported at her previous job for obsessive behavior toward coworkers, including showing up at their homes, leaving surprise gifts, and forcing unwanted celebrations. She had been fired quietly and disappeared for 3 years. A psychological study I read later said obsessive social behavior often centers around rituals, and birthdays are one of the most common fixation points for people with certain personality disorders. Looking back, Lisa wasn't trying to celebrate me. She was trying to possess me, control me, punish me for rejecting her. I still think about the cake sometimes, about the black balloons, about the phrase on the banner, "Happy last year." I moved apartments 2 months later. But even now on my birthdays, I never post online, never tell anyone, never go out. Because a part of me still fears that someone, somewhere, is waiting for the day I slip up, the day I celebrate again. And maybe this time, she'll bring more than a cake. I used to work at a call center. The kind of place where the lights buzz overhead, the cubicles feel like padded cages, and the air is always a mix of stale coffee and burnt-out ambition. Every day was the same. Scripted calls, artificial apologies, angry customers, and that endless clicking of keyboards that never stopped. But the worst part wasn't the job. It was the person sitting in the cubicle right next to mine, Mark. Mark wasn't like anyone else in that place. While everyone chatted during breaks, complained about hours, or shared memes, he remained silent. He never laughed, never joined conversations, never looked anyone in the eye, but he whispered. Constantly, not loudly, just softly enough that you couldn't understand the words, but you could hear the restless sound of his voice through the thin cubicle walls. Every shift, from the moment he sat down to the moment he left, that whispering never stopped. At first, I thought he was talking to customers or practicing scripts, but his monitor was often off, completely black. Sometimes he would just stare at it as if it was playing something only he could see. I didn't think too much about it until one afternoon when I leaned back in my chair and realized something was wrong. He wasn't whispering words. He was whispering numbers. Non-stop strings of numbers, fast, breathy, precise, like he was reciting them from memory. At first, I assumed he was doing calculations, until I started recognizing patterns. Some of the numbers he whispered sounded familiar. too familiar. That's when my stomach dropped. He was whispering my phone number. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe I misheard. But the next sequence he said was my building number, then my apartment number, then my mother's old landline number, the one I hadn't used in years, the one not even on social media. The whispering didn't stop. It just got more personal. One morning, after hearing him whisper my old school's postal code, something inside me snapped. I pushed my chair back, stood up, and walked to his cubicle. His screen was black. His hands were motionless. Only his mouth moved, whispering those numbers like a machine. He didn't stop when he saw me. He just slowly lifted his eyes to mine. I asked him quietly, "Why do you know all those things?" His lips curled into a tiny, unnatural smile. The whispering didn't stop. He simply said, in the same soft, airy voice, "I only collect the important ones." No explanation, no apology, just that. I felt cold all over. I went straight to HR. I explained everything, the whispering, the numbers, the personal information. HR looked at each other, exchanged a glance, and then one of them actually laughed. "Oh, Mark's just different," she said. "He's a quiet guy. Maybe he's good with memory. Nothing to worry about." She suggested I focus on my work and avoid making assumptions. 2 weeks later, I woke up to a series of notification pings on my phone, my email, unauthorized login attempt, my banking app, incorrect password entered, my cloud storage, suspicious activity detected, my internet service provider, password reset requested, all from the same IP address. And that IP matched the call center network. I reported it again. This time, HR had no choice but to investigate. Turns out, Mark somehow had access to an old admin-level employee portal that hadn't been disabled, the kind that stored full employee profiles, home addresses, phone numbers, emergency contacts, employment history, previous job information, even scanned IDs. He had been accessing these files for over a year, not just mine, everyone's. He had spreadsheets of data, printed pages, handwritten notes. He had maps, timelines, relationship charts, information nobody in that building had any reason to know. When IT asked him why he collected all of it, he calmly answered, "Patterns. I like patterns." That was all he said. The police got involved. He was removed from the building quietly, escorted out without a word. But before he left, as he passed my cubicle, he paused and whispered a new number softly, just for me to hear, a number I didn't recognize. Later that night, after hours of thinking, searching, and checking, I realized what it was. It was the serial number on the back of my router, something I had never shared anywhere, something impossible to know unless you were inside my apartment. I still don't know how he got it. The call center tried to keep the incident hidden to avoid bad publicity. They changed passwords, added firewalls, made announcements, but none of it helped me sleep any better. Even now, months later, sometimes when I'm alone at night and the house goes completely silent, I swear I hear whispering again. Soft, rhythmic, endless whispering. And what scares me isn't the sound itself. It's the idea that maybe he isn't whispering numbers anymore. Maybe now he's whispering names. Maybe mine. If these stories taught us anything, it's that the scariest people aren't hiding in forests or abandoned houses. Sometimes they're sitting next to you, smiling politely, waiting for the right moment. Let me know which story unsettled you the most. Stay safe, especially at work.